Okay, we're back, and what I had to do is get a towel and stick it around that and use that to get it off. It was kind of some dried on paint or something near the edge when it wasn't put back right. So there it is, right there, the Prussian blue. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stick it down here over in this palette, and just a tiny little gob of it will do, and then I'll cap that back off. Believe it or not, these paints are pretty expensive, and we'll just do our best to use a little bit of it today. Now, you can paint with just this and just stick this glob right on there and paint just like you would with acrylics or something else, but that's not what we're going to be doing today. Since it is watercolor, I just dropped the brush there. This is not professional. I hope you just bear with me. We're having fun though. We've got 3 different brushes that we'll be using. Here's a 1-inch flat brush, and just like the name implies, it's very flat. I would use this if I was doing a large swath right there. If I were painting a large swath of this, I would paint water on there and a large pattern there, and I could use to get a lot of coverage of paint pretty quickly. I won't be using that much today. We also have 2 other brushes that are just simply round brushes. We've got a number 6 and a number 12. Okay, these are just artist brushes. I've already wetted these down. They came with the bristles somewhat frayed, and all you do is just simply dip it in the water, swish it around, get it all moistened in there, and then you just wipe off the excess water. And as you're doing that, it kind of comes to a point, and you kind of sharpen it to come to that point that you really like. Again, a lot of these you can use for many different purposes. This is pretty much a medium brush here, and you see it's sharpened to that kind of point right there. The smaller one obviously just allows us to get to a smaller point, and it holds less there. With these brushes, what you can do is if you just barely touch, I'll try to stick my finger here, you just barely touch the tip of it up against something, it'll make a very thin line. If you put a little more pressure on it, it'll make a thicker line. Okay. Now let's try this here. There's 2 methods we're going to be talking about, and that's the wet on wet and the wet on dry. So let me set these paintbrushes aside. I don't need those right now. I'll just put them up there. I've got my supplies. This is just a plate that I turned over. I didn't know if this would stain the plate or not. You'll probably have a plastic palette. I didn't bring one back to my house with me here, so I just turned this over in case it would happen to stain it, but it shouldn't, unless there's a hairline crack or something that would get beyond the glazing. So anyways, I've got a palette right here, and I'm just using one color, so there's only one spot in here. I'll put some water from the brush into this paint right here, and you can see it just mixes up that paint. Now there's a little bit of a glob on here, so I'm just going to keep working at it here. It's going to be a lot of pigment in there because there's only a very small amount of water so far. So while I'm still doing that, let me talk about what we're doing over on the side. To the left over here, we've got the just a napkin, paper towel, something like that, and then the center we have got the paper. This is special watercolor paper, and what I did, you grab the other piece here. I took a 9 by 12, 8.5 by 11, whatever paper it is. It's pretty thick. It's almost like cardstock, and it has bumps. I don't know if you can see it in this lighting here. Maybe there. It has this little bumps and such on there, and it actually has some sizing on there, which is kind of like if you were to starch something like your clothes while you're ironing them or something, and that just helps it, the watercolor, not to stain into the paper and bleed all over the place, but just to stay in one spot. So this is special paper. It's watercolor paper. We only want to use that, not regular copy paper or something else. Okay, I'm just going to grab a little bit more water and splatter it a little bit. And make sure you're doing this in a place that you don't mind getting a little bit of paint on, or try not to make a big mess. All right, I think I've gotten all those clumps and globs out mostly. There's still a big one right there, but that's all right. Okay, first thing we're going to do is just a dry painting, wet on dry, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint just like this. Now what you can do is put a little bit more water. I'm just getting some of the paint out of there, so I can hold water in my brush and then bring it over here. And I'm just diluting this a little bit. I'm just going to paint next to that a little bit, not touching it. And you can already see that this is lighter. Now it will dry differently. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing. Just add a little bit more water. Touch it in here. And then I'm going to paint some more. Now, I've heard a lot of watercolor artists say this: don't fiddle with this. So you may think, oh, I don't like how that looks right now. Don't keep coming back and squirting over here and messing with this over here. Just let it go and it will do its little thing. All this water will kind of settle in as long as you don't have too big of a puddle, and it'll do its thing. So I'm just doing this, coming in. Now I am leaving a separation between these as you see it. And you can see it already getting lighter. Oh, there's my daughter. All right, here's some background noises. That's all right. You can see a separation between these. Let me just join one of these. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to join them with water. And you get to see what happens here. Now these may have already started to dry in some of the outskirts. But if I just paint some water right here, see how it just bleeds? If I paint some water right there, eventually these would pretty much end up being the same color. Now there may be a slight difference, especially if it started to dry. So if you're using watercolor, you want to make sure that the different values stay separate from each other. Once this dries, I can come back in and paint something between it if I want, but I should not paint these together unless I want them all to blend together about the same. Okay, now we didn't stretch this paper, and so I am getting a little bit of puddling and whatnot right here and warping where this is a high spot and you see the water doesn't want to stay there, and it's a low spot. We're not going to bother with stretching. If we were able to do a whole semester's worth of this, we'd probably get into that. Let's just keep going here. I got some more water on there, just tap some off, and I'm going to grab just the corner of this and try to paint something lighter. Oh yes, we're already getting much lighter. That's too light. I don't want that light. So I'll grab back in this darker spot here, and let's paint it into here. Okay, I'll just keep adding some water. Generally, you want to work from dark to light when you're mixing your colors. But if I were to do an entire painting, see that's very light. I just grabbed a little bit, not very much at all. There we go. And then we're just doing this. You can actually do this and try to get 50 different varieties. I've seen that before. We're not that advanced, so try to get maybe 10. That ended up a little bit too dark, didn't it? It's darker than that previous one, so I didn't have enough water in that. I'll just make this a little bigger, and we're all just having fun. I feel like Bob Ross right here. Happy little accidents, right? Okay. And you can blot off and get some water removed from that. Interesting thing about watercolor is in order to get white, generally we just use the paper. Okay, so again, just tapping a little bit of water, grabbing a little bit more paint, not much here. You can see I'm not going to even come close to using up all that paint, am I? See that glob you thought wouldn't be enough. And you may think that this little spot right here isn't really going to do much, but you'll be surprised when it all dries how that looks. So just keep adding a little bit more water, grab a little bit of paint. I don't know if this is really showing up on the camera or not, but we're going to try to get some 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. See, we're already, if I just left that as white, it would already be at 10. So this isn't that difficult. My water over here is getting quite blue, but it doesn't matter right now. Okay. And I'm just going to paint this on and get rid of some of the excess water off the brush right there. Just going to play with this. Now, you see that's kind of dancing around on top of the paper. Again, that's that sizing that's causing it not to soak in. You can pre-soak the paper to have it do that. Now, what I just did there is I had a little stray one of these. I don't know if you can see my hand right there. Had a little stray fiber, so I just grabbed it right off of the end right there and just kind of gently pulled that off. It was already coming loose, so I just didn't want that stuck down in my paint somewhere. Okay, and I suppose let's just do one with just the the blue water only and not grab any more paint, it'll just put a really light tint on the paper. Yeah, it's very, very, very light. You might not even be able to see that. I can see it slightly here where I'm at. So there you have it. That's what I'd like you to try, and then we can see how yours turns out.